Aloha, welcome to the Mr. G podcast. This is episode number 55. We're going to be talking about writers, nonfiction writers in particular today, and how Google tracks your movements, nonfiction writers. So if you're planning on writing a memoir from now on out, and even from a few years ago, you better be telling the truth because you're going to need receipts because your phone, whether you like it or not, is tracking everywhere you go. So if you said you went here, if you said you did this, or if you said you did that, you better be careful there, buddy. My peers, my writing peers. Today is Thursday, July 20th, 2023. I'm coming to you from the outskirts of Chinatown and Honolulu, Hawaii, the largest city in the Pacific. Like I said, this is episode number 55. It's a warm 78 degrees today. Yesterday, we had a great episode about the same topic, except the audio was scuffed and I still uploaded it, but it was just kind of for naught. Today, I did 2 essays already today. It's only 6:54 a.m. I wake up at 3 a.m. every day. I overslept today. I didn't wake up till 4 a.m. But in those less than 3 hours, I've gotten a lot accomplished. I fed over 100 cats. I wrote a 3-minute essay and I read 2 essays, checked the audio, and now we're going to be doing this podcast. We're going to be talking, like I said, about how Google Map tracks your every movement. Now, Google's official response to this is, okay, well, we track your movements, but we automatically have the setting on default to not track your movements. But you can accidentally change that setting a lot when a pop-up window comes up. Do you want Google to know your settings? And that happens every time you use Google Maps. So if you don't want Google to know your whereabouts, but it's useless because they say also if you're using any of Google's apps like YouTube, not just Google Maps, YouTube, Chrome, anything on your phone, then it's still tracking you unless I've never heard of somebody, downloading an alternative browser on their phone. I'm sure it's possible. I did take a class at the University of Texas all about not skirting the system, but not letting them watch you. It was a small survey class with about 10 people in 2007. One of our assignments was to download the Radiohead album In Rainbows. And this instructor, he was from Germany. And like I said, there was only like 10 people in the class. And he showed us how to get on the dark web and he showed us how to like hide our information. But the one assignment that I remember is we had to download Radiohead In Rainbows. And the thing is, it was like one of the first albums where Radiohead, the band, made it only available on their website for the first few months, the album In Rainbows. And the only way you could get it was to go to the Radiohead website and then pay them whatever you thought you should pay them. So you could pay them $1 or you could pay them $100 or whatever amount. And they were the first band to do this. The instructor liked Radiohead a lot. I liked Radiohead a lot, and so it was a fun, memorable assignment. And as far as the album goes, in Rainbows, it's one of Radiohead's best albums. Another great album by Radiohead is OK Computer, which came out 10 years earlier in 1997. And the band actually has admitted that OK Computer from 1997 and In Rainbows from 2007 are actually the same album connected, and they are supposed to flow right into each other. And I've noticed that as a Radiohead fan, some songs off of In Rainbows, I get confused. And I'm like, oh, is that off of OK Computer? No, that's off of In Rainbows, even though they're 10 years apart. And personally, Radiohead probably my favorite band. And when I first heard OK Computer in 1997, I was a 16, 17-year-old teenager. And I was listening to 120 minutes experimenting with weed and LSD. And flash forward 10 years later when their album In Rainbows come out, and I'm a full-time University of Texas student. So also the contrast is really great. So those are probably my two favorite albums. We went from tracking data to that. But another great class while we're on the topic at the University of Texas was the history of rock and roll. And I mentioned the history of rock and roll in my book here, Gonzo Education. It was one of the most popular classes at UT Austin, and a lot of people wanted to take it, and it was taught by a famous instructor, I guess. I actually knew more about rock and roll than the instructor, but there was about 200, 300 people in the class. And in my book, everything in my book is legit, and you're welcome to research or interview people or whatever. But one thing that I did exaggerate a bit is when I'm talking about the class history of rock and roll at the University of Texas, and I said I made the highest grade in the class of any student, but I actually made the second highest grade in the class. But it is true, I made the highest graded class of any student. Also in that class, this class took place during the summer session. And so there was a regular full-time University of Texas art professor also in the class. And you could see everybody's grade in the class, not their name, but you could see how many A's there were, how many B's there were, etc. And so there were very few A's, and me and the UT art instructor that was also in the class that loved rock and roll, because I was a student in his art history class, and he would always bring up music and a lot of the same bands and obscure music topics that I knew about. And to have him also in the history of rock and roll class was very memorable. Both me and him scored the highest grades in the class. He actually scored the highest grade. He could have had some special treatment also being a professor at the university, but I scored the highest of any student, any undergraduate in the class. And I remember one day before the final exam, we had both, been doing well in the class, and but we wanted to score high, and it was hard to get an A in that class. There were only a few A's available. Only 3 people scored A's out of like 300. And so I was at a sitting area in a courtyard near the classroom, and I was going through flashcards, and I had all the famous bands, the Motown bands, or the doo-wop bands that used to go by bird names. So you had like the Cardinals, the Orioles, the Ronettes, and that it's real easy to get those confused. And so I had like flashcards of those, and he's like, what are you studying? Are you ready for the exam? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty much ready. And then we joked about how easy the Bob Dylan and Beatles questions were on like a previous exam. We're like, ha ha ha. They're like, what's this song? Strawberry Fields Forever? Strawberry Field, like really easy, simple, like stuff that both me and him knew Bob Dylan and the Beatles, like that. But these cards I was showing him, and on each of the flashcard, I had drawn a crazy picture or done in special font, because that's a way to, when you're studying for upper echelon exams, that's a way to create a mnemonic device if you want to remember a lot of information. So with the Cardinals, I drew like a funky red cardinal, and then like the information on the back. And I was showing him the flashcards, and he's impressed. He's like, yeah, that's going to help having something different like that on each thing. And then we went through the flashcards together for a second, me and the art history professor that was in the class, the history of rock and roll class. And I felt like I was stronger than him, because I had like maybe 100 cards, and we would go through, and unless he was just joking and like he didn't know all answers. But if we were competing with the flashcards, then I had scored better than him. But at one point during the class, like I said, I said I know more than an instructor, but there was a point in the class where I was listening to the college radio station, or the Austin radio station, on the way to class, to the history of rock and roll class. And we were studying Bob Dylan, and the instructor was like, Bob Dylan is 70 something years old, and he's still touring. And then I'm like, and I had heard on the radio that he was headlining the ACL festival. And then so I shouted out, I'm like, yeah, he's headlining ACL. And then a couple of the kids laughed, huh? And then he's like, Bob Dylan, ACL? I don't buy that. Let's see. I got a computer. And he's all boomer style, like, I discovered Google, and then I'm like sitting there, good. I fucking love Google. Me and Google. Ugh. But then he looks it up, and he's like, huh? He's actually right. And I remembered that too. I made sure to remember that. The instructor was like, he's actually right. Because I hate it. Before Google, people just wouldn't believe me. I'd be like, there's 350 million Americans. To be like, what? He doesn't know. Look at his glasses. What the fuck does he know? And so many people, I'd be teaching a class and have like a seventh grader. What? We can't use our phones. How do you're or using a word that somebody doesn't understand. Like, young people are very malleable. What? Now you're just making up words. That's the most insulting thing that I've heard a dozen or more times in my life, when somebody accuses me of making up words. It's like, no, motherfucker, you're just fucking stupider than I am. I just have something what you would call a larger vocabulary. Vocabulary, what? He's just making shit up. But yeah, that's something that happens a lot. And I've dealt with it my whole life. You know, I'd walk into a college honors class at the University of Texas and people would literally start laughing. And so you can't, change how people see you. Well, you can't change how people see you. So fucking wear broken glasses. Now, somebody like me, an artist, like I judge individuals on their behavior and not their type of dress or, but type of dress is part of nonverbal communication. And I have noticed that that's one thing. If I decide to shave and wear contacts and a nice collared shirt every day, then yeah, I would get different treatment. And while I was at the University of Texas, I kind of tried to fit the role. I'd wear a Yankee cap, a little bit to the side. They acted like I was like white trash from a trailer park. And I was like, okay, here we go. But if you want to know more about my experience at the University of Texas, you can read my book, Gonzo Education. It's one of the top reviewed books on Amazon. I think like 4.8, 4.9 review. And it starts when I drop out of high school and it ends when I graduate from the University of Texas School of Journalism, one of the top journalism schools in the United States. So that right there should tell you how well written it is. But like I said, I really enjoyed that class. There was another time I was listening to the same radio station, and the instructor was talking about Chuck Berry, and I was listening to NPR, and NPR was saying how Chuck Berry lives in Missouri and still plays in a small bar every week. This was when Chuck Berry was alive, and he started talking about Chuck Berry and how Chuck Berry played late into his how play late, and I tried to add to the conversation. I was like, yeah, I actually learned that Chuck Berry still plays at a bar in St. Louis. And then he just like gave me a look and just like, you don't know. He didn't have a European accent, but he might as well have. You do not know. I am from Europe. And but like I said, I scored the second highest grade in the class. And so obviously he did have to admit by the end of the course that I did know a little bit of what I was talking about. And like I said, my first book, a lot of that is done from memory, but you can, track down that course. You can see the grades in that course. You can see the instructor of that course. And so a lot of the teachers, places, jobs that I had, you can track those down on IRS, job listings. They were all listed. So, I've had over 100 jobs. All the jobs that I worked in Gonzo Education, the records that I broke, you could contact the San Antonio Express News and find out who the top salesman was. You can go to Chris Southward at the Metro News. So even though my book was written during the time period between 1996 and 2010, before Google tracked everybody's movements, you can still verify a lot of my book. People writing nonfiction memoirs and autobiographies now, they have to be very honest because your phone, which essentially goes with everybody, is tracking you wherever you go. So you can go to Google right now and see on a little map. And for me, I live on an island, the island of Oahu. So everywhere I go each year, I check it a few times a year, but it shows me, oh, on this day I went to this part of the island, or on this day I went onto the North Shore. This day I went to the east side. Oh, this day I was doing that work on the west side. And so it's interesting to see. Personally, I like the idea of it tracking us. I've always liked the idea of security cameras everywhere. The more information, the better. I don't have anything to hide. And one of my favorite quotes is "Knowledge is power." But the Hill wrote a great article. I'll just read the headlines. So Google location history introduced in 2009 logs users' locations through their smartphones. So wherever you go, if you have your phone with you, it's going to be able to track that. So you can look back a year or two. And if you're writing a book about your life, you better be honest, because if you say you went here or you went there, and if you didn't, you better have the receipts. And the Google tracker will make that possible. Look, also, not just that, Google tracker plus Facebook post, Instagram post, pictures are saved by your metadata. So every time you take a picture, it's a lot of times, unless you have it turned off, it shows you where you took that picture, what time and what day. Location history was designed to be helpful and even though a lot of people complain about it, obviously. And Google is able to provide a better service to its users because of it, the tech company says. The feature is turned off by default because of privacy risks associated with collecting geolocation data, but it's extremely easy for users to accidentally turn location history on. It's also great for law enforcement if you're investigating a crime and somebody says that they were here at a particular time, or they did not go there at a particular time, then you can check their Google location history and you can be, oh, you went there and you didn't bring your phone, or you said you didn't go there, but it says in your location history you did. It's a little known Google feature that has been around for years. And it's an account-wide service that logs your movements through your smartphone, and it has stored real-world comings and goings of millions of users since 2009. While the knowledge that your movements are being monitored by one of the world's largest tech companies may be unsettling, Google says location history was designed to be helpful. The company says it can provide a better service if it knows where you've been, giving you more detailed commute advice, recommendations based on places you visited, and most relevant advertisements. Still, if the news makes you want to rush and turn your Google location history off, you're not alone. There are some major privacy risks to having your location data stored online. That's why Google has said its location feature is switched off by default and can only be activated with the user's permission. So every time you open Google Maps, it will ask you that. If your location data is not turned on, it will ask you that, because Google wants your location data. Data is the new gold. That's what these tech companies are after. They're after your data. It's worth more than the price of gold. And so the best data is where you've been, where you've going, what type of neighborhoods you visit. And the thing is, even if you turn it off, your location may still be saved to your Google account when you use other Google sites, apps, and services like Google Maps, and also like YouTube and Chrome and many other things. AI and Chat GPT, they may take a lot of users away from Google, but many people are going to use Google to search things for their whole lives, boomers and millennials probably. And Chat GPT will be used by Zoomers and Gen Alpha and early adopters like myself. But Google will be around for a long time regardless, and it will be a top tech company because of where they're investing, and also because of stalemates that like Google, Gmail, and Chrome. Like if you wanted everybody to be connected to one particular thing, at least in the United States, from what I see, Gmail is the most popular. Some people are on Facebook, some people are not on Facebook. Some people are on Instagram, some people are not on Instagram. Some people are on TikTok, some people don't do TikTok. But Gmail is pretty universal. It's kind of like how AOL used to be. And Gmail is something that everybody, if you want to connect as many people as possible, Gmail is the way to go. And the thing is, Zuckerberg tried to do that similar with Instagram and Threads. He knows Instagram's slowing down. More people are on TikTok than Instagram. And so he tried to make Threads the first social media site that took your followers from Instagram and moved them over to Threads. And that was a good idea, but it didn't work. And eventually Instagram and Threads and Facebook are all going to die out, and it's going to be like MySpace, and it's just going to have the nostalgic users, and like the people that still use Facebook, they're nostalgic users. And Zuckerberg knows that as well. That's why he tried to change the name and everything. But it was a interesting podcast. We're going to talk more about the Google Tracker and how it relates to writing later this week. Like I said, when I wrote this book, you can verify a lot of it, but any books and memoirs written now, including anything that I write about future events, I always have a phone with me. So if I tell you that I went here on this particular day, then my phone will track that information. My security cameras will track it. Daily Post will track it. I was talking to my girlfriend the other day about different periods that I'm writing about. And my first series is the Gonzo series. The first book, like I said, is available on Amazon. There's 2 more books. It's a 3-book series, the Gonzo series. The first one starts with Gonzo Education. And I was telling her when the series ends and when the series begins. And There's definitely a stopping point, a part of my life that I'm not going to write about. And the reason being is because of TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Um, you can follow anything. You can make your own story. You can make your own movie of somebody's life, and that's going to be possible in a few years. AI will be able to take all your Instagram photos, all your Twitter posts, all of your Facebook posts, all of your home pictures, everything that they can find on you, and they'll make an artificially generated movie all about you and your life. And you'll see you on the screen. Maybe at first it'll be a little animated, not that good quality graphics, but eventually they'll get it down to it's like indistinguishable between real life. And so Hollywood, you're striking. Hollywood, the human race has never fucking needed you less than they need you now. Writers, boomers, yo, there's something here that will write every single screenplay. I could have somebody with a handicapped person come here and write an Oscar-winning screenplay by just putting their ideas into Chat GPT. Thank you, Elon Musk. And there's no need for them. There'll be need for creative people like myself, but you either beat them or join them. And so I'm all about progress. And even though I'm a writer and Chat GPT is taking away many writing jobs, many white collar jobs, I'm a jack of all trades, baby. I can do a lot of things. And I'm also excited about the future, and I don't hang on to the past. I am not out here. If this was the days of automobiles and horses, I wouldn't be clinging to my horse. I'd be out there looking at the new cars and wanting to test them out. And it's all about progress. So, 80-90% of jobs are going to be taken by artificial intelligence in the next 10 to 20 years. And that's going to be the big news story. But also the big news story is going to be artificial intelligence and quantum computers solving many human problems that we didn't even know were solvable. And so with that being said, everybody try to be nicer to your neighbors. Fuck you neighbors. No, including myself. And just in general as a good person, and from a Christian mindset too. But also thank you for listening, and I'm happy to be here for you. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity. This is episode number 55, and you can hear all 44 episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts is the best place. Audacity Podcast, Spotify Podcast, wherever you listen to it on your way to work. Listen to it at work. I want to be in this podcast club, and I deserve entrance as well. So with that being said, full episodes uploaded in their entirety onto Twitter, twitter.com/Gregory Brandt. All right, guys, everybody, from me and my street cats here on the outskirts of Chinatown, aloha and mahalo. Shoots.